So the prices of RAM, storage, or SSDs, GPUs, CPUs, wait, no, not yet, thank God. But the prices are bad. And like the big ZTT says, we're currently in what I'm calling Ramageddon. But we can just call it the end of the world as we know it. But I just built and paid for a PC myself just a month ago. And I know the prices are crazy right now, and if you want to build a $1,000 PC in 2026, well, it is possible. And you will get 100 FPS in Fortnite, 100 FPS in Call of Duty, Battlefield 6, and 75 FPS in Cyberpunk with ray tracing on, and all of these games are in 1080p ultra settings. So if you want to know how to put together a parts list for builds like this, watch till the end to see the full benchmark of this build. Let's get right to it. Okay, so starting off with the CPU, we're going with a Ryzen 5 5600. Now, I know this is what everyone tells you to get, but it is truly a great CPU for budget builds. So is the Ryzen 5 5500, which is the CPU I'm rocking myself in the system that we're actually recording on. As much as I would prefer to go with AM5, it's just not realistic for this low of a price. If it was your highest priority, then it's definitely possible, but you'd be sacrificing too much GPU performance to make it happen. I think AM4 is still the play right now. Also, for the CPU cooler, we are going with the stock cooler with AM4, which will help you save some money just for the RAM. For the motherboard, we are going with a B550 motherboard. This will unlock faster SSD speeds with PCIe Gen 4, and these motherboards are becoming a lot easier to find than the aging B450. I would recommend getting the least expensive micro ATX motherboard with 4 RAM slots and ideally built-in Wi-Fi. Now, if you need a sound card or you are doing something else crazy, I would get the MSI Pro B550M-VC Wi-Fi because it has 4 PCIe slots, 4 GPUs, sound cards, etc. However, if you go with the MSI Pro B550M/VC Wi-Fi, you will get only 1 SSD slot. So if you need to in the future, go with the MSI B550M Pro-VDH Wi-Fi. Also, that motherboard does only have 1 PCIe slot, so just go with any micro ATX B550 motherboard you can find. And time to bite the first bullet, the RAM. We are going with any 2 sticks of 8GB DDR4 clocked at 3200 MHz or higher is going to work. I would recommend trying to find one with a CL rating of 16 or less if possible, but not required. Having 32 gigabytes would be a nice boost coming from 16, and more games are starting to utilize the extra RAM these days, but the prices are just too unrealistic. There are lots of kits around $100 price point. The kit I am going with for this build is the Olo Black DDR4 kit with a CL rating of 19. That is above 16, I know, but just gotta go with me. For the SSD, we are not going to go with a 500GB drive. For this, all you need to do is find any 1TB SSD. If it has PCIe Gen 4 speeds, great, but do not go above $150. For this build, I'm going with the Levin JPS600 1TB SSD with PCIe Gen 3 speeds. Editor's note here, that SSD is actually unavailable at this time. It was actually just the cheapest SSD I could find. So all you're looking for, again, is just a 1TB SSD NVMe. But again, please don't go above $150. If you physically can't find one for below that, you can hit that price range. I think that's like the average price of 1TB NVMe's now, but just do not go above that. That is the cheapest SSD for a terabyte I could find. Now, it's nice to mention that you can go with a 500GB drive, but all I am saying is a terabyte is basically minimum nowadays, especially if this is going to be your gaming PC. Probably the most controversial pick of the entire video, but believe it or not, NVIDIA's RTX 5060 offers the best price to performance right now for $350 GPUs. Previously, I would have said the Intel Arc B580, which is still a good pick, but the 5060 beats it now, and it's even cheaper. The 8GB of VRAM is certainly not ideal, but with this price range of a build, you're most likely playing 1080p anyways, so it's not a huge deal at that resolution. I would recommend buying whichever one has the best deal, but currently I see the Gigabyte WindForce OC Edition GeForce RTX 5060 8GB priced right at $350. And this is as of May 26, 2026. For our CPU and GPU combo, I would recommend getting a 650 watt power supply. You're specifically looking for models ranked tier C or higher on the PCU tier list, linked down in the description. If you think you'll upgrade your components in the near future, it's probably a better idea to buy a unit with a higher wattage now, though. The models available the most often is the MSI Mag A650BN. That is actually the model of power supply, the exact model I am rocking in my PC. I think all of these suggestions have something to do with my PC. I'm not trying to overshadow. I just built one of the best price to performance PCs on the market. So, anywho, the case selection is always a personal preference. Just remember, go on Amazon or whatever you shop on, even PC Part Picker, and just make sure you're filtering by micro ATX. You could go with an ATX case, but the aesthetics don't really match because it's like putting something small on the inside and you have a bunch of empty space in between. I think there should be a picture on the screen. But one of the best models for pure performance gaming PCs in this price range is the Okeanos Aqua 3 Air. It comes pre-installed with 3 black 120mm PWM fans, and it's one of the cheapest cases available that's full of fans. If you prefer a wood grain design, then I also like the Okeanos Compress 3 Wood. Both cases pack a ton of value around the $60 range, and they include USB-C ports. Only one for the Aqua Air, and I think only one for the Compress Wood too. You'll need a B550 motherboard to take advantage of the USB-C ports, however. Currently, we're sitting at $923.40. This number will be updated in the pinned comments, so if we've gone way over that, this is probably not, like, at all, just... yeah. Or, honestly, if the pinned comment says we've gone below $800, you can probably look and there will probably be a new $1,000 build budget, because we could slam a bunch of stuff in here, but the prices are just too insane. As I said, currently we are sitting at $923.40 for this build at the time of recording, but it should stay under $1,000 for the time being. So, let's get into the benchmarks. We will go over both CPUs with the 5060. Let's get into it. When I say both CPUs, earlier in the video I did recommend the Ryzen 5 5500. There's really no difference, and you'll see that here. So, if you're building a system with the Ryzen 5 5600 and the GTX 5060, you'll get about 100 to 110 FPS in Fortnite using 1080p Ultra. In CS2, you will get about 220 to 230 FPS using 1080p Ultra. However, in Call of Duty Battlefield 6, you will get 100 FPS using 1080p Ultra. Now, in Valorant, you will get about 260 FPS using 1080p Ultra. In Marvel Rivals, you can expect to get around 100 FPS in 1080p Medium. In the game League of Legends, you will get about 170 to 180 FPS in 1080p Ultra. And finally, in Cyberpunk with RTX on, you can get about 85 FPS in 1080p Medium and about 75 FPS in 1080p Ultra. However, and this is where the statistics get a little interesting. If you're building a system with the Ryzen 5 5500, which could save you anywhere from $30 to $50, you will get about 100 to 110 FPS in Fortnite using 1080p Ultra. In CS2, you'll get about 220 to 230 FPS using 1080p Ultra. However, in Call of Duty Battlefield 6, you'll get about 100 FPS using 1080p Ultra. Now in Valorant, you'll get about 260 FPS using 1080p Ultra. In Marvel Rivals, you can expect to get around 100 FPS in 1080p Medium. In the game League of Legends, you will get about 170 to 180 FPS in 1080p Ultra. And finally, in Cyberpunk with RTX on, you can expect to get 85 FPS in 1080p Medium and about 75 in 1080p Ultra. Now, it sounds like I just repeated myself. So, if you want to save some cash, you can go with the Ryzen 5 5500. But if you want to stay a bit higher performance, go with the Ryzen 5 5600. But anywho, thanks for watching. And if you would like me to build this build for you, email me using the email on screen. Also, hit the like, sub, and maybe share this with a friend. I know these times are tough, but building a $1,000 gaming PC with 75 FPS in Cyberpunk is still possible in 2026. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.